Everyone, is that one on? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thanks everyone for coming out to the Startup Grind event tonight. Basically, every month we do different fireside chat events with founders, CEOs, and investors. Here tonight we're partnering with the ETower here at Babson College, and I'm gonna turn it over to Ryan to give an introduction on what they're doing and how they're promoting entrepreneurship.
Cool, thanks, Jason. So a lot of familiar faces, but as we were just speaking out for some of the newer people in the room, ETower is a living learning community on campus for entrepreneurs. So there's 21 student founders. We all live together, work together, running companies in a bunch of different industries, everything from food and beverage to services to tech to fashion and retail. And so pretty much everything you can think of. We do a lot of events like this on Wednesday evenings, right, to bring a lot of cool entrepreneurs, encourage people to meet one another. We also do a lot of things like trying to get conference tickets, going to cool events together, bringing in alumni as mentors, starting mentorship programs, holding office hours. Just a lot of really cool things to make sure that entrepreneurs are getting both the resources that they need to be successful and just giving them a lot of really cool opportunities to meet awesome people. And I think that this is a great example of that. So yeah, thanks again for bringing SplitFit in here, Jason, and thanks to Startup Grind, seriously.
Thanks. Yeah, I really appreciate that, and it's been great working with you guys. Yeah, so some of our other partners, we're partnered with the ETower here. We're partnered with Boston Startups Guide, who helped promote the event, prepare for VCs. My other company that we do startup consulting and help companies through the fundraising process. Zyk Technologies helps with your development work. Alley and Coalition are both other co-working space we've partnered with and hosted events at those facilities. And then our newest partner is RX Bar, who donated some of their nutrition bars for tonight's event. And yeah, glad everyone had a chance to grab some of those. And yeah, with that, I'd like to introduce Brian and Robert from SplitFit. Brian is a Babson alum himself. And yeah, I'll let you start off with the introduction here.
Okay. Do we need the microphone or do you want it? Oh, for the recording purposes? Okay. You want me to go first? Sure. Sure. Yeah. Good evening, everybody. So my name is Brian Gardner. I am the COO of SplitFit. I'm not actually sure what that title means. We'll get into that as we talk about what it's like to be part of a startup and a grind, which is actually one of my favorite terms. I grew up in the Boston area. I went to undergraduate at Wesleyan University in Connecticut. Graduated in '91, so that means, yes, I turned 50 next week. And I did my MBA program, evening MBA program at Babson. Absolutely loved it. Took me 3.5 years and graduated in 2001. Before I hand it over to Rob and I know each other because we actually have been friends since high school. So one of the interesting dynamics we could talk about is what is it like to actually go into business with friends. Anyway, good.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Jason. Appreciate it. So Rob Shapiro, CEO of SplitFit. I'm also the founder of SplitFit. I'm also the founder of a company called BodyScapes Fitness. And so I've been in this fitness industry now for, I founded BodyScapes in 1997. So it's 21 years strong now. I love this industry. I've been in this industry for 20 plus years. I am a personal trainer by trade. That's how I started. I actually started in the industry at a club in Boston it's called City Gym, but it's not there anymore. It's in Kenmore Square. I started there actually as working at the front desk for $5.25 an hour. I kid you not. And they hired me for front desk, and they also hired me for janitorial services. So I did the front desk, and I also cleaned toilets at night. And that's basically, that's how I started in the fitness industry. So fast forward, we have, BodyScapes now has 10 locations. And we'll get into how we founded SplitFit in a little bit, but I've been in the industry for a while. I love it. So.
Yeah, and how did you sort of go from working in that gym to creating your own facility and starting your own
So
franchise?
I did a lot of different duties when I was working at City Gym. I started to train to do some personal training, and what was interesting was when people that were doing the personal training was really at its infancy back then. It was really reserved for. It wasn't as mainstream as it is now. It was really designed for almost like the rich and famous. And what was happening was these clients would come up to me and they'd say, wouldn't it be great just to get rid of all of these people and just have a dedicated personal training studio that we could just go and just do personal training because we're not using the gym. We just want to see our trainer and work out with the trainer. So it was almost like a light bulb went off in my head. So I just attacked it. I wrote a business plan. I went to the SBA. If you guys are familiar with the SBA, the Small Business Administration. I got a $50,000 term loan. I opened up my first location, which is still there in Newton Highlands. It's next door Harrah's Restaurant, if you guys have ever been there. And I basically set up a shingle and basically got people in there and started training, and it took off big time. What people were doing is they weren't going to the gym, they were going to a studio to do dedicated personal training. And that's how I got into that.
Yeah, and so was that all? Did you? You expanded to 10 studios now. Is it sort of bootstrapped that to where it is today, or did
Correct.
you? Right. Okay.
It was so I've taken out probably eight or 10 SBA loans over the time. It's good when you pay back an SBA loan because they'll actually give you another one. When you don't pay it back, they won't give you another one. It's very simple.
Makes sense.
In fact, I still have my when Citizens Bank when I paid off my loan 5 years later, I still have literally that plaque in my office that I keep. So I bootstrapped everything I could until we opened up our first gym. Okay, so we've diversified over the years. So over 20 years, we have 10 facilities, but we have 3 full-scale fitness centers, 15,000 square feet each, big ones. We operate 1 CrossFit box, okay, and we also operate 6 personal training studios as well. Okay, I bootstrapped everything until down in Brookline, Coolidge Corner, there was a gas station. And they got rid of the gas station and they built a 2-story building. And the top floor was 15,000 square feet. And the landlord was auctioning it off for lease. So in order for me to get that lease, I said, I want to put a gym there. I'd love that space. How can a gym fail in Coolidge Corner? It's so busy. So I literally, at that point, I owned a home. I took out a $100,000 home equity loan on my house for a hole in the ground, basically, because that was basically, that facility basically that's the only way I could get lock up that lease. And that was 2008, okay? In 2008, I don't know if you guys remember, but the entire economy went to shit and it went crazy. So I went to try to get another SBA loan and they said, basically, no way, because we're not loaning to anybody. So that's when I took on a partner, okay? And the partner invested in that location. I had to share equity, okay? But it was a great move. He's still my partner today. So.
Oh, great. Yeah, and how did you find him based on, his interest in owning the gym, or had you worked with him before?
He was a client of mine.
He was a client? Oh,
Yeah,
nice.
so he was basically a frequent client at one of my studios.
Oh,
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you've worked, you worked at started the brand, built it up to 10 locations, and then sort of, what led you into coming up with the idea for this new company, SplitFit? And
so being in the industry now, being in the industry, seeing what's happening in the economy, what's going on. You guys all see it. But we were seeing it firsthand with our members that come into our facilities, okay? the economy is changing, okay? And think of it, put this in perspective. Gyms and studio make their money on two sets of revenue sources. They make it on membership and they make it on personal training. If you don't have both, you don't have a successful gym. You need both, okay? So we started to look at why personal training wasn't growing. It was stagnant. It was only about 2 or 3% of the marketplace. Still, it's a $9 billion industry. It's not insignificant, but it wasn't growing. And so I started to call up some of my colleagues, HealthWorks, Beacon Health Athletic Club, Boston Sports Club. I know all those guys because I basically grew up in the fitness industry with them. So I'd call them up and I'd say, hey, Jason, what's going on with your clubs? Are you guys growing in personal training? He's like, no, flat. It's not growing. So I'm like, something's got to give here. Something's not right. So we started to dive into why personal training today wasn't growing and why more people weren't doing it. We found 4 major pain points, okay? First one, easy, way too expensive, right? $100 an hour, $80 an hour, who's gonna afford it, right? It's too much money. Second major pain point, it's really intimidating, okay? So if you think about it, today, when you go to a gym, you have to you sign up at a gym, you sign up a membership, then you got to sit with a personal trainer, okay? And the personal trainer basically does everything but take your blood pressure, okay? If you haven't been to the gym and you're a little out of shape and you're a little unsure of participating, you feel like an idiot because the trainer is like out of an underwear, model, and they're basically going to tell you, you need to exercise 3 days a week and come see me 3 days a week. Otherwise, it's a failed. It's not going to work. So intimidation was a big one. The other one was there's no social component with personal training, and the entire economy, my industry is going social. CrossFit, group exercise classes, ClassPass. I mean, the entire industry is sort of moving. Along with the gig economy, it's basically moving into social. People want to work out with their friends. They want to work out with coworkers. They want to work out with other people. They want to work out with people they don't know. They want to meet people. Okay, that was the third thing. Okay, fourth thing is the clumsiness of the schedule when you walk into a gym. Got to go to a gym. You got to sign up. You got to give $1,500 to get 15 personal training sessions. You're not even going to know if you're going to see that again, and so forth. So there's no mobile technology, okay, today that allows you to access that inventory, participate in personal training in a social, less intimidating, less expensive, more accessible way. So those were the real big 4 pain points, and we said, oh my God, something's got to change.
Yeah, and how did you go? So you identified the pain points. Were you considering, whether to do something within BodyScapes or a separate company? How did that decision come up?
So the whole idea of the application was to scale this. Right. So if we're feeling the pain points and BodyScapes in our gyms are feeling, that personal training is not growing, something's got to give. My thought process was this: if I don't create this and figure out how to do this, someone's going to be coming to me in a year and saying, I got something really cool with SplitFit. You need to do it. Because if you think about it, what SplitFit does, okay, think of it as a 2-sided marketplace, okay? Could be 3, but think of it as a 2-sided marketplace. Gyms have a problem. They need revenue. They need people to come in the door. They need to have more people paying them money, with the exception of not just membership fees, okay? The customer has a problem. They don't want to access personal training if it's $100 an hour. And there's some really good personal trainers. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but most people would rather participate in exercise with somebody else than alone, okay? So, if you're going to access a personal trainer, you're not going to spend $100 to do it. So it was that 2-sided marketplace that said, okay, this is what we got to hit, and then I'll throw something else in. All of these gyms have personal trainers that are sitting around, not busy, okay, which is very key, okay? This is SplitFit in a lot of ways is a yield management tool for gyms, okay? All these trainers work at 3 or 4 different clubs, okay? I see it in my clubs. They can't get busy. They don't have enough people to train within their 4 walls. So there's open inventory that's a problem. So we see that, and that's a big, the trainers. So if you could make it a three-sided marketplace where basically the trainer needs more inventory because they want to get busy. They don't want to work at 3 or 4 different clubs.
Right. Yeah. Can you describe, what the application you developed does and how you're solving some of those issues you mentioned?
Yeah. So essentially, the way the app works today, if you download it and look at it, okay, is you have the ability to jump into a pool of 4 people for $20 an hour. You don't have to be a member of the gym, and you can pop into the pool, and you can meet people, you can invite friends, coworkers, and so forth. And it's a $20 session, and you get to use the gym for the day. Okay, so you don't need a membership. It's an a la carte model, and you essentially think of it this way. Think of it as Uber Pool. Okay, you can take Uber X to the airport, or you can take Uber Pool. It's going to cost less to do Uber Pool. Okay, and in a lot of ways, what we found is working out in a pool of people is more interesting and more fun than it is to work out one-on-one with a trainer, and that's what we're seeing.
Yeah. So how did you, sort of dive in and, did you, who developed the application and how did you get it started, to where you are today?
We came up with the idea. We attacked the idea. We wrote a business plan. We raised a fair amount of seed capital. We raised about $1 million. A lot of that was friends and family and my company. The advantage we had a little bit was our track record. It's not like Rob Shapiro's developing a restaurant app. I'm developing a fitness app that actually I see real pain points in my industry. So we had a little bit of a leg up there, but we raised the money. We hired a firm in Boston called ThoughtBot. They developed the app. We didn't want to do this overseas. We needed control over it. It's going to cost us a little bit more money to do that, but we did it. And then we started piloting it at our locations. And then we started adding partner clubs. So today we have almost 20 gyms on the platform now, along with our 4 clubs. And then we've expanded from there.
Right. Yeah, and I know you had known Brian from high school or growing up. Yeah, how did you build a new team around this platform and find the people you wanted to work with?
Okay. You're just tired of talking at this point, right? Is this on? Okay.
Yeah.
So a little bit of my background. So I worked for a medical device company for 25 years, a company called Hemonetics. They're in Braintree. And was fortunately or unfortunately part of some downsizing that was there. It turned out to be a great thing. It happens, it's life. But I also had an opportunity where I had a year to kind of say, what do I want to do with the rest of my life? And about probably 4 or 5 weeks into that, was driving home from the golf course, like this is the greatest thing ever. Once a lifetime opportunity. Rob, gave me a call and he said, hey, I got an idea for you. What do you think? And I said, that's kind of a crazy idea, but I understood it, having been also part of the industry a bit. And so I said, yeah, I said, I have time on my hands. I said, why don't we tackle this? And actually it was my background that I had worked my first probably dozen or so years of my career started in finance, really didn't want to be finance. Kind of landed there. The MBA program here started to get me broaden my perspective. And then I moved into services business at the company that I was at, and sort of aftermarket sales and support. Did that for 6 years. Got to do it on a global basis, and then wound up in a product management role as part of running a business unit, a franchise. And so had an opportunity that was software, and it was in medical transfusion medicine area. So I had somewhat of experience, but always had a little bit of a yearning to be able to say, well, I spent all this time at Babson learning how to be an entrepreneur. What would that be like? What would that experience be like? So there was an immediate appeal to the idea of this really is a blank piece of paper. And knowing enough of Rob, and I've known him for many years, that he's an idea guy, and a terrific visionary people person. But somebody's actually going to have to go do the work. So our skills are very complementary. I say that in a lighthearted way, but it is very true. To your question around team, is that you cannot do this alone. And I had certainly learned this through business experience. I had learned it through life. That it is all about having the right people on the team. And so I think right off the bat, we were fortunate enough that we had very complementary skills, and have certainly been able to grow and learn from observing these different type of skills that are behaving in an environment where you're out you're bare naked in the cold here, trying to take an idea and turn it into a business. Even if you've raised the money, arguably raising the money is, in some cases, is the easiest thing to do, because the money is always out there. It's really going through the validation that you have an idea, you have a business, you have something that is going to be differentiated, that's going to be sustainable, that's defensible. And so that was as much as a part of the experience. And early on was very fortunate enough to read a book called The Lean Startup. I don't know if anyone's read that book, but I'm like, every person in this room, you got to read that book. Yeah. Okay. I'll tell you 5 books you need to read. That's number 1 on the list, and that became the Bible. That became the roadmap. And our team some of it evolved just by inertia and just sort of through contacts of who we knew. But we also learned along the way that we didn't have the right people in our skill set. And that was going to be problematic. And so we were honest with ourselves around, as an example, we didn't necessarily have the experience around how to do user acquisition in this day and age. What's it like to sort of market in a 21st century digital marketing world, paid media world? None of us knew how to do that. And so as much as you can learn things along the way and get better at it, yourselves, and there's a thrill in doing that, you also can't limit the success of your team by virtue of if you don't have those types of skill base. You always have to be honest and say, we got to get this person, we got to get this type of resource, we got to think about building the team. And that's really been, but then you also have to be extremely creative around how you do that, because the money goes fast, and you have to get people to sign up for what you're trying to do. And compensation has to be done in very, very creative ways. I think we're still seeing this unfold as it plays out, but I think a lot of, to Rob's credit, and his strong networking skills, is really assimilated a network of people that have been the pieces that we've needed as we've been able to move along. And that will always continue. It's always going to be about building the right team. And some of those things we've made missteps. We've had not necessarily the right people on the team. And the old saying, right? Hire slow, fire fast. And you always look back on it and say, we knew it, and we should have moved on it faster. And you just sort of live in those realities. But I think what is amazing about going through this type of an experience real time is just how many little decisions you have to make every single day. In terms of trying to get to something that is substantiated and is real and sustainable. It's exciting, but it's also very, very, it's tough. It's a grind.
Yeah.
That's why I love the term. So, long answer to your question, but.
No, I appreciate that. And yeah, what are, you'd mentioned some team members turned out great. You're still working with them today. So what is, and some not as much, but yeah, what are some of the characteristics you're looking for when bringing on new people?
Yeah, and I'll sort of offer my perspective on it. I would say that there is no substitute for someone who believes in the vision of what you're trying to do, and has the grit and the determination to go do it. I will take that any day over someone that has the PhD, and the impeccable resume. You need people that believe in what you're doing, because the amount of adversity you have to overcome, even when you're being successful, nothing ever goes the way you expect it to. And so you need people who are just they buy into what it is you're trying to do. They see a vision, they see a transformation, and then you get that commitment to it that's beyond the money. You know, it's become something that's personal to them about that they're going to be part of accomplishing something. And that's something I've witnessed, very different from coming out of a corporate world for 25 years, is, yeah, you know, people talk about being really committed, but it's different, you know? And I think that that is one thing that has carried us a long way, is we've been able to cobble together in a creative way different people and resources on our team, and not all of those people, and there's a lot of, we're talking about like part-time people, and a lot of these resources may not necessarily have the exact resume or background or skills that you're looking for. They have enough to be successful what it is you need to do, but they also step up. They rise to the occasion. They'll go beyond, you know, the obstacles that normally people may get stuck on, because they believe in what it is you're trying to do. The opposite, you know, and Rob and I joke about this all the time, the opposite is also incredibly true, in that when you're trying to disrupt an industry, and this is very disruptive in the terms of how the old way of doing personal training as a business is very threatened by what we're trying to do. It's a much lower price point, right? And it's a business that lives off of that $100 an hour client, which is 2% of the market, makes up 2% of the users, which are these super users, make up more than half of that $9 billion marketplace. So from a gym standpoint, you know, I'm fat and happy, although my business is under threat and I don't want to acknowledge it. But if I have these clients that basically keep me going, I don't want something that's going to come in and potentially make it where that client that pays me 100. I mean, it's very, very disruptive. And so the point of it is that what you run into are what we affectionately term blockers. And when you're trying to break things and move fast and learn, and listen, you know, and then you've got to deal with competitive threats, and there's some big, you know, very real threats out there to us in the marketplace. Those people that get in the way, like, don't keep trying to go through people that get in your way. You know, go to the next door. You know, move around, work with people that align and understand what it is you're trying to do, and then, you know, become part of the solution and not staying part of the problem. It sounds kind of like, duh, well, that's an obvious, but it's not necessarily something we understood right away. We had to sort of learn painfully, because time is your enemy. It really is. I mean, you can always go get more money, but you can never get back time. And so if you're not moving fast enough in the reality of how the marketplace behaves and how fast technology and all these smart and young people coming up in the world, it really is your greatest enemy. And so, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I'll just add that there is the rush of doing a startup and the roller coaster ride. There's literally nothing like it, and I say that in a positive way, because it is a real roller coaster. Because at one day you're literally on top of the world, and you say you're solving, you're basically disrupting an industry, as Brian said, and we're creating something that's really not in the marketplace. And then the next day, you wake up in the morning, you say, well, you know, what the hell did I just get myself into, and why did I do this, and why am I spending so much time doing this? So you have this real roller coaster from my experience, and I personally love it. I never went to graduate school, so this isn't something I was yearning when I was in school. But when I drank the Kool-Aid, it was like, when I started, it was like, boom, it's like, it's a rush you really can't ever replicate. But anyway, for what that's worth, I mean, I just adding to what Brian said, so.
Yeah. Yeah, building off of those, like, what were some of the biggest transitions or adjustments from going to that? I mean, for Rob, from more of the brick and mortar business, and from Brian from the corporate world to the startup, like starting your own tech company.
So I realized real quick, terms like Ruby on Rails, funnel, all these things that basically I never even heard of. I mean, I know what a funnel is, okay? The only funnel I knew was in college, was when you stood there and someone, put a beer in front of you and dumped it in, drank his, that was the only funnel I knew. But the funnel that I'm realizing now is basically a funnel that is, top of the funnel is the users come in. The middle of the funnel is how you retain them and how many times they come back. And the bottom of the funnel is how much money you make out of them, okay? So for me, all these terms and then learning the tech side of it was a big learning curve. It's a very steep learning curve for me. So, I could open up a gym with my eyes closed, but tech businesses, and it's funny, when I first started this business, someone asked me this question. They said, are you a tech company or a fitness company? And I said fitness company, and oh, was I wrong. This is not a fitness company. This is a tech play all the way through and through. And I'm not I'm now a CEO, a tech CEO, but that's not this is the learning curve I had to deal with.
Yeah, so I think your question in terms of transition, I mean, a lot of probably similar things that Rob has said. I think that the interesting experience for me was coming from a company where, and every company suffers from it, which is, sort of bureaucracy, the hierarchy, political animals, the sort of the cultures that exist in a company that was, so by comparison, company I was in, when I started there was a $200 million, grew to about $1 billion in the medical device, global sort of, it had a lot of great things about it. I mean, to speak negatively of it, but it became sort of breathtaking to sort of be in an environment where you really, and I think this is true in all environments, I think it's true in life, is you really do define the culture. I think if you look upward, I get the argument that upward in an organization is how culture should emanate down. But at the end of the day, I've come to learn, and throughout my life, other things I've been involved in my life, like at the end of the day, you are the culture of the environment you work in. It's how you choose to operate and interact with each other. It's not something that's written up on a wall saying this is who we are. It's how we behave. It's how we operate. And so as you come into a startup, what was breathtaking, one of the things was the ability to establish that environment and have a footprint and a fingerprint on that, and the way that our team would interact and the way that we would operate. And we'll see where it goes. It's always, it can change. It changes more so over time for sure. But it was invigorating to be like, well, this is kind of ours, And then I think also just the speed of which, as I alluded to before, the speed of which you're just making decisions and dealing with like real problems or opportunities and pivoting and seeing your way through things in a way that it's all yours. It's all kind of yours to figure out. And that's a daunting thing. In a lot of ways, you come out of from a big corporate environment. At the end of the day, it's not really your neck's not really always on the line. I mean, yeah, you could lose your job. But at the end of the day, it's sort of an infrastructure and an organization sort of provides layers of where blame goes when things don't go the right way, versus in this type of environment, you're really kind of completely naked, But the dichotomy on that is that you're also signing yourself up for, you need to fail in order to figure it out. There is no, like, this whole, and the concept of, like, it's this sort of, I don't think anyone thinks it's a straight line, and they certainly think it goes this way, but it's like, it's all about a series of failing, but also understanding why you failed, why you all have to read the Lean Startup, right? But you have to understand what it is you were trying to validate from a hypothesis standpoint, and then how do you go do it, and then what did you learn from it? And then, okay, got it, now we got to try this. So I think that that was the biggest change, is just sort of like you're out in this environment where, and I think to Rob's point, I think the pace of which you're moving through stuff compared to being in a corporate world is so different. It's so, it's a lot less safer,
right. So what are some of those like pivots and changes you've had that you mentioned?
Yeah, I think, well, there's been so many of them. I think sort of the big ones, when we started down this path, and this is an example of, make sure you got the right people in the room, but also it's okay because you'll never have perfect information. But we started on the path of, the business opportunity was these gyms, as Rob said, have trainers who aren't busy during certain times of the day. So there's all this unutilized capacity, which we had validated through our market research that we had done. And you have all these people that would participate in it if the barriers were removed, right? The pricing, all the things that Rob spoke to. So we said, oh, okay. And then we also made a decision that, well, there's a big world of independent trainers, so trainers who don't work in a club. They work by themselves, and they'll come into your home, or you'll train out in a park, or these kinds of things. So, no, we don't want to do that, because we're smart enough to say we think our target market are people that predominantly want to train in a safe place. So what do you think the ratio in our business is between male and females that use personal training? Anyone want to take a guess? Anybody? I think it's close. 75% female? Yeah, it's in that order of magnitude, right? And so when you start to think about that, and what does that mean? What does that environment look like? Those types of things, considerations are pretty important. But one of the things we looked at is we said, okay, so if we're providing a technology that gives the ability to connect these two things, you know, the club has, we started, well, what do we do with the trainers? I'm like, you know what? It's the club's job to make sure that they have good quality trainers, and the trainer really isn't that important in this equation, right? It's not as important. What do you think we've learned over time, right? It is all about the trainer and the relationship between them. And so one of the things that we've had to come full circle on now, and really was a big miss in terms of product development and a lot of how we've evolved over time, is the things we need to do to be able to make the trainer be successful at delivering on that experience, retaining that customer, building a client base, how we help them actually do that. So, you know, here we are 2 years into this, and it took us that long before we got there. So that's an example of a more recent one, but it's kind of use that as an example back to the point of that you don't know what you don't know until you go test it, you know, and get real customer feedback. And so that was one. Another one that we had was our product development firm. When we developed the app, they were like, you know, everybody uses Facebook, everybody. So all you need, and everybody uses iOS, right? Uses iPhones, right? And so the way we're going to develop this app is it's on iOS, and when you log in, you're going to log in through Facebook. You don't need to worry about it. So we put it out there, and we're like going. We put it in these hands of users, and we're like, why aren't people like signing up, right? So rule number one, listen to the damn customer and stay really, really close to who you think your customer is. Really close, and get closer and really listen to them. I can't say that enough, because that's what you're really trying to understand. And you may, and in doing that, make sure you're not hooked onto what you think the answer is that you keep pursuing, because the answer is probably something different than you thought. But it was a very practical example of, well, we started to hear from customers like, yeah, we're almost all on Facebook, but we don't actually trust when we log into something with our Facebook login, because we don't know what's going to happen with that information. And think of what people were onto 2 years ago when we were sort of putting that out there, and now there's some of the realities of lack of trust. So that was like, duh. So now we had to go back to product development. They had to change that, where you can now do it either way, which you can sign in. And now the ratio of people sign up with their Facebook login versus who sign in by email, even if they have a Facebook account, is 1 out of 10. So 1 out of 10 people who have a Facebook account actually still log in with it. So that was an example of, you wouldn't have known. You wouldn't have known until you actually talked to the damn customers.
Yeah, and what's it like? I mean, you know, you said one of the most important parts is the trainers, and in a gym, like owning a gym, you know, they're your employees. With this, they're just somebody like a user on your platform. So yeah, how do you deal with sort of managing the quality of the trainers and, you know, that aspect of the business?
Yeah, I would say this is something that we're still learning, right? We grappled with this early on, which was, at the end of the day, who owns that experience? So if the customer, we looked at a very practical standpoint, if the customer has a bad experience, who's going to pay for that, right? Because it's reality. We know enough that there are people that, and we got kind of wrapped around the axle on how important that actually was, and we sort of, you know, Rob actually stepped in and said, we own it, you know, it's our problem. Can we move beyond that, you know, real quick? If the customer had a bad experience, we're going to refund their money. Well, sure enough, what do you think happens, right? So we actually have a refund guarantee, of which the number of times the customer actually had a bad experience, first of all, is very low. If they do, they vote with their feet, right? And you'll never hear from them again anyway. But if they do have it and you needed to take care of that because they truly were disgruntled, was like less than probably 2% of the actual times when it actually happened that you knew of. And so, that's the way that we sort of dealt with that. I think we're very much in a learning phase now around the notion of what is it that we need to do to help the gym with the problems that they have as it relates to the trainer and this revenue stream. So it's become very different than looking at, we just need to get more people in there, and we're a marketing arm for the gyms, right? We're gonna bring the people in, and we get it. We're smarter now that, the trainer is kind of critical to this, but we're really figuring out the sort of, what does that actually mean? What is it that you need to do? What role do we wanna play? And even when you lay all those things out that are the pain point the gyms have related to the trainer, which gets into hiring, keeping them busy, retaining them, teaching them how to do group training versus one-on-one training, how to raise their game, how to retain clients, how to use social media to promote themselves. Well, guess what? Most gyms don't know how to do any of that. And what we need to decide is, around the spectrum of all those things we could do, where is there a business in that? And where's a business that's scalable? If you can't do all those things. We can't fly all over the country training trainers how to be effective. But that's the real problem that the gyms have. And the ones that are particularly, to Rob's point before, when they're analyzing the trends and why personal training is not growing, well, in addition to it being expensive, is that most trainers, they're not very sophisticated. It's not hard to be a personal trainer. You can get certified over a weekend doing an online class.
Most didn't go to Babson.
Yeah. So I think that's where we're starting to get smarter around, and really, we're at the cusp now, we're asking these questions ourselves, like, shoot, this is a big, wow, how are we gonna do this different? Because at the end of the day, where the problem started to replicate itself is, as we were driving the business forward, and we're all about getting users, and we're adding inventory, and we're getting people to book into it, and it looks great, and then we looked at retention over time, which is part of the conversion funnel that Rob was referring to, and people were falling off, and it was like, well, damn, we spent all this money getting that person to show up and train, and then we lose them, and the margins of what we're making are so small because we take 20% of each dollar that is spent on that session. It became our problem by virtue of the math wasn't working. And so once we sort of dug into it, said, all right, our business is now going to start to look very different around, we're a tech company, of course, but what are those services and solutions? Either we need to figure out how to do it, or potentially there's a partnership way of doing that as well. Potentially, I don't know. We're in the midst of trying to figure this out.
Yeah. I just wanted to, open it up to some questions from the audience before we, over there.
Yeah, so the revenue you're making, I'll guess on average $70 an hour in revenue. You're keeping 20%. What does the trainer get? What does the gym get?
Yeah. So.
That's split work.
Yep. So our pricing is evolving, I would say, but generally the way it works today is it's $20 for a spot in that group of up to 3 or 4 people. Okay. How we landed on that was, if you go back to, again, we're bringing people in who would otherwise never use personal training, and we have trainers who are otherwise not doing anything. So the argument is like, well, what are you typically paying them? And it's a little bit different. They all have different pay structures. But the argument was, if you're in a club where you got trainers who are standing around, what are they typically doing? They're doing front desk staff type work. Well, what are you paying them? Well, we're paying them like minimum wage. Okay, so if we can bring people in and they're prospecting at least off of potential clients, and you put the services to them, you can grow from that, right? And then the theory is, if our marketing is effective and we're doing the things, removing the barriers, and namely getting people to train together, now you got 2 or 3 other people in there, so up to $80. So what's attractive about this is we don't charge the gyms to get on this platform. We don't charge people to download the app. It's just a revenue share. So today it's where we take 20% of that. The rest goes to the gym, and then the gym is typically paying the trainer. So, and they own that relationship. We're not hiring trainers. They're not SplitFit trainers. And then the pay structure just really depends on the club you're in. It also depends on where you are in the country. So it's been interesting to go through this experience trying to make this work in the Boston area versus when we start to think of, more out in other parts of the country where trainers don't make. In Boston, you got trainers that make typically $30, $40 an hour, right? So right away the math doesn't work, right? And that's one of the challenges we face. But you get into other parts of the country, and this is actually very attractive. And we're talking to some other chains that are outside of the Boston area now, where we know that they're paying their trainers like $12, $15 an hour. So the math will work this. So we're kind of seeing and learning and figuring this out. But does that answer your question? That's basically how the math works?
Yeah, yeah, so it's really, it's just two pieces. It's you take a cut, then the gym gets the balance, and the gym sorts out with the trainer on their own.
Correct. Yep.
Is there a rating system for the trainers? Is there?
Great question. Yeah. So we do provide the ability today. It's very basic, where the client can give feedback after the session is complete. The next time they go into the app, they're asked to give a quick 1 to 5 rating on the trainer and the club. What we haven't done is how we've thought about how do we leverage that data in a way that, back to the whole notion of the name of the game is what we're doing is removing barriers, right? And the barriers are about also building trust. If you look at our typical profile customer, they want more. They're already hesitant to do this, right? For all the reasons Rob articulated before. The job that SplitFit does is provide information that, in a way that builds trust, like what Airbnb has sort of figured out in terms of how it creates that environment. It's a very high trust. Yep. And so the information that we can provide, and we haven't done this yet, but back to what we can help with the trainers, potentially certainly helps the customers, is how we represent the ratings back to the customer. But it's also the kind of thing you need to be somewhat thoughtful about. How do you do that? Are we Yelp? Are we, like, how would we use this? The good news is that the data is there, basically in terms of collecting ratings. We probably even do more. But there's also just the performance of a trainer over time. Right? And so if I'm who do you think, if you're going to the SplitFit app right now and you're trying to find a trainer, aside from not seeing what the ratings are, who are you going to want to train with? It's the person who's seeing all the other people. The answer is kind of right there, but there's so much more we can do in terms of sophistication and differentiating, because I think that's going to be one of our differentiators over time, is how well, and other companies have figured this out, right? Care.com, the babysitting site, and no one in here probably has used that, but there are other services that have figured out, Thumbtack, or these services. If someone's providing a service to customers, how do you represent information about that person in a way that gets them to yes? And I think there's a really interesting world there that we're just starting to tap into, quite frankly.
You guys said that well, first of all, thank you guys for being here. You talked a little bit, Rob, about how you guys outsourced at the very beginning the development of the app. You guys were tech guys. Did you guys end up bringing that in-house? How long afterwards did you bring it in-house? How was that process like? I imagine it was somewhat chaotic. I'm curious about that whole.
So it's a little of everything you just said. We started with Thoughtbot, and we worked with them exclusively to get the beta, to get the MVP. And we're now in the process of bringing it in-house, but we're still using Thoughtbot as a little bit of a crutch to help transition in-house tech. We have to bring this in-house. We can't use an agency anymore. So this is, we're at the stage now where we have a huge product roadmap that we need to start exercising and doing. And an agency is great to build an MVP, but it's got to come, we have to get tech in-house. So we're actually, I think this answers your question, we're in the process now of bringing it in-house. The nice thing about using Thoughtbot, a little bit more expensive to start, but the way they build the app is a lot easier for someone that is that understands this to come in and take it over. A lot of times what happens is you build it somewhere else and you got to blow the whole thing up and you got to redo it, and then you lose time. So we were fortunate to have Thoughtbot build it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, can I just quick follow up on that?
Yeah.
Do you, like looking back on it, looking back the last 2 years, how quickly you needed to make product changes or wanted to? Do you think that was the right call, kind of going with an agency for that amount of time? Did you feel like it hampered your ability to make product improvements quickly, or do you think it was nice to have, like, you guys focus on, what makes the company great and then focus on timely aspects?
So my quick answer is, it was great at the beginning, and now it's holding us back. That's my quick answer. We have got to have scrappy people that know tech, that can roll up their sleeves and bust stuff out, because we're like, I don't want to be dealing with 4 or 5 people in a room from ThoughtBot, although they're excellent, but we have to get people in-house. So we have to be scrappy that way.
Yeah, and I think that, it's a pretty interesting subject from this perspective of, this was all about, at what point in time are we ready to go to a new unknown versus away from a known, which was complicated very much by the fact that product development in the Boston area, you're talking about like, $150 an hour if you're lucky, to get those type of skills. In an extremely transient market that's also very, very competitive, against a backdrop of, okay, well, a better answer is to do it somewhere offshore, overseas, but then you have the realities of that sort of crazy world. So those are the realities. I kind of put this in the context of like when you're trying to make decisions and how you have to see your way through it. Those are the things we looked at in terms of criteria for making that decision, of which the benefit of hindsight is, yeah, we would have loved to have had it where we could have moved a lot faster on certain things. But, there were decisions, we had to make them, and, we made them for the reasons that we did, that all become part of the learning. And it's certainly, we joke sometimes, we say, boy, next time when we go start the company, what we'll have known now that we wish we knew then, but you get there.
One of the missing pieces to the puzzle of our team, we don't have any tech people. None of us are techies, so we can't build, we don't code, we can't do it. So a lot of tech companies have a founder or a person on their team, co-founder, that basically can code, and we don't have that. We have other skill sets that we have, but we don't have that tech piece of it. That's why we sort of outsourced it with ThoughtBot, and it's not uncommon, but that's how the Ruby took. So, good question. Yeah.
I'm curious if the both of you have either considered or at least thought about a potential customer feedback analysis arm, not just for the trainers, but also for the actual facilities. Like obviously not all of them will be the full functioning facilities and gyms, but I'm curious if you've considered maybe after a session allowing customers to say like, hey, like the gym is curious to learn more about whether or not like what might hold you back from being part of this process. And a potential coupon that would be substantiated by the gym itself, that maybe would be offered the next session. So like, in other words, if you can get the gym, like, for example, let's just say like, it's called like X Gym, if they're giving a 20% off, if their coupon for the next training session that the person would take, that would then motivate the customer to provide feedback and analysis on the gym that they worked out in, and maybe it could also help the gyms actually find the root cause of why people aren't coming in as much to do those full memberships. So I'm curious if that's been.
It's an interesting way of looking at how customer feedback, and part of, the ultimate, we're trying to solve the problems for the gyms. What I would say is, in general, to kind of the points I made before, I think we've had to try to stay very ruthless about how customer feedback helps us figure out what we need to ultimately do. Not always an easy thing to keep doing over time, because not every customer wants to keep giving you feedback all the time. Yet, there's a balance there between how do you get the information from the customer in a way. I think we've largely done a pretty good job being smart about how we stay to it. One of the couple of challenges that come out of that, and I think a little bit to your point, the hardest feedback to get is that customer that left and didn't, wasn't interested in sort of leaky pipe, right? I don't want to keep talking to customers who love SplitFit. That's great. Although you can make an argument that is what you're supposed to do, is just be ruthlessly focused on the customers that love what you do, and then build your business around that, what you're doing there. That's a very fair argument. I think in the early stages of learning, though, I think you're trying to understand the what didn't work part of it as well, and learn from that. I think one of the things that became problematic over time for us is the notion of how we gave away a lot of the value, and how we were trying to do that, had the right intentions, in other words, things for free. But it also became very problematic over time, because what we weren't really learning is, were people going to pay for this? You know, and were they going to use this the way that we needed to be able to show, because we were at such a point of disruption around pricing, if you will. And so that was one of the valid pivots that we had over time as well, as we realized, shoot, we got to this is where we needed some perspective on our team. And we got that from different angles, which is like, okay, like, hold on a second here. Like, you got to be, you're running out of time to be able to show whether this thing actually is going to work. So just not necessarily answering your question specifically, but it's an interesting way of looking at it, saying like, how do we use the feedback loop as it relates to the customer that we've brought into that club that's using this product as it relates to the holistic, very interesting feedback.
So, and another point also, just to clarify, is it's greater than 80% of all the people that are doing SplitFit sessions, they never walked into the club that they're participating in. So it is very important for that gym feedback, because we're bringing people into gyms. Boston Sports Club in Back Bay hammers Back Bay with flyers and free day passes and 20% off and blah blah blah. It's such crap, and they just go nuts, and they kill it. And what we've done in a very short amount of time is we actually gotten people into those clubs, because it's something different, and it's cool, and it's an application, and it's not Boston Sports Club trying to do it. It's something different. So there's about 80% of people never even walked into the facility. And another statistic, which is also fascinating, is, I think we touched on this also, it's about greater than 70% of all the people that have done SplitFit sessions never tried personal training before. It's really important to know that. So the barriers that I mentioned when I first started here, telling you about the 4 barriers, those are real. There are barriers that people do not want. First of all, there's tons of barriers with exercise, tons. Okay, you go to a gym, everybody parks at literally the closest to the door to get into the club, because they don't want to walk to they're going to work out for an hour, but they don't want to walk. They want to be. It has to be convenient. So it's very important to know. So your question is a good one on the actual gym feedback is good.
Yeah, the other thing too is that, the main thing that we have observed is the reason that people aren't going into that gym, it's because the economy has changed in terms of non-committal to memberships. People have so many more choices. I mean, think about cell phone plans, right? Like, everything's month to month now, right? Think about in the world I came from, like how long it took that to change. Well, technology and consumer preferences changed that. So I think the dynamic is less about, I don't like what that gym may be offering. I think it's just the reality of, like, I just don't like commitment. I want choice. I want flexibility. And by the way, a lot of what we're riding from a class pass cut down a lot of the trees in this industry for us, right? And they paved the way for non-membership access is a concept that clubs understand and buy into. And we're very fortunate that we have that entry point, that we don't have to transform that part of the market, because that's would have been a huge paradigm shift, and there's a whole different investment that's required to break down that type of mindset. Yeah.
So say I'm a new member, like I used SplitFit for the first time, that's my first time going to the gym, and then I join that gym after. Do you guys like take a percentage of commission for that sign up at first?
No, we haven't seen that happen. I think our position on that, we get 2 things that are kind of lingering out there. One is SplitFit going to cannibalize my existing customer base, right? And we have pilot data that show that it wasn't the case. And the other is that, I could use this, which is one fallacy, but it's what they think of. The other is, I can use this to be a lead generator. And kind of back to the point I was just making before, we kind of sit there and be like, it's not happening. We're okay if the gym thinks that way. We don't sell a position that way, nor do we have seen the data to support that that's what happened. But if that's what they think and that's what we're like all day long, right? I mean, if we're bringing, to Rob's point before, if we're bringing people into your club that would never come in there, great. And we've just sort of chosen, let's not worry about the, how we may want to get some of those economics out of it. People are just going to move around and float and go where they're going to go. They are. So that's been our perspective on that, interestingly. Yeah.
You talked before about how the growth in personal training increasing, and this is totally anecdotal, but it seems to me like in the last couple of years, classes have sort of exploded in popularity. Social CrossFit class, right? The social CrossFit classes, the spin classes, things like that. Where do you guys kind of feel like you fit in that? Are you sort of like between a personal trainer and a CrossFit class, or what's your take on it?
Yeah, I think so. Really, what's behind that is the explosion of the boutique studios, right? Boutique fitness studios, right? Easy to open, specialized, not a lot of barriers to entry, technology giving the choices that go with that. A generation that's a lot more fitness oriented, and so and what is not uncommon to see is that the typical fit person who's fit, and I'm making very broad generalization here, but if you've grown up into that, so if you're in your early 20s or 30s, it's not uncommon that, to your point, I do yoga on Monday here, I do Soul Cycle there, I go running on Wednesdays here, and on Friday I do whatever. I have those options now, and I like that. I love, I get a lot of variety and choices. I have control and choices. What I think we're doing in that is we're making strength training, i.e. done instructor-led personal training, which is not just strength training, but that's sort of what it's generally seen as, or specific training to, related to a skill set I don't have as part of my regiment. We're making personal training relevant in that cycle of options. And we're seeing this with customers, for sure. Not all, that's not whatever, I'm being some very general terms. But I think that this is very interesting that we can make this case, like we're making personal training a relevant option in the type of way, the menu of options, how people look at fitness today. And we've seen this, we've observed this, talking to, ask them like, what do you, ask customers, imagine that, what are you using this for? And like, oh, I use it to get, I'm typically to a 75% female, I use this to get I need strength, and everyone's seeing the importance of strength training, right? 80-year-olds, osteoporosis across all ages, there's like the benefit. And so that's a key trend that we can pick up on and say, well, so that's all great to hear, but most people don't know how to do it, or they don't want to get injured, and so that is definitely a play, if you will. I don't call it a play, but that is an angle for us to market to.
Yeah, any last question here? All right. Yeah, just wanted, is there any, just want to get your final wrap up and, any advice, there's a lot of entrepreneurs in the room. Yeah, any advice you have on somebody that's, starting out their own company and what to do, what not to do?
Yeah, I guess I'll give you my parts, and then Rob can kind of probably close it out. But I think I would just summarize some of the things I've said before. It's not for the faint of heart. Know where you are in your lifetime in terms of your ability to do something like this. For us, we decided to do this, and we had 3 kids we had to get through college, each of us. So those are very real things. You guys are probably at very different stages. So you're a little bit of an advantage. You may not have the experience and the wisdom to a certain regard, but you can always get those. You can get those. But just think about where this would fit from what it is you're trying to do and be realistic about it. And you may have to bootstrap your own lifetime, or period of life to go pursue some of these things. But if I had to do it all over again, I would take those shots. Take risks in your life. You have to take risks. I mean, if you think of all the good things that have happened to you in your life, how many of those things were actually because you took risks to go do them? Probably not. They landed in your lap, right? I mean, so there is this element of, if I were to sort of be the old guy in the rocking chair, I'd say, go do some of these things. And if you're sitting here, you have an interest. There's a reason you're here. That's, there's no subset of you. Every one of you, has a curiosity or interest in this. And I would say, go for it. And I would, I'd read that book. I mean, seriously, if there's one thing I look back, I'm like, that's the Bible for doing it. And put yourself in a position where you can pursue the types of things, and be obsessed with customer feedback, understand that learning is part of success in terms of how you do that. But also ask yourself, and some of these things are things you can learn, is do you have the grit? Do you have the grind, why this is such an appropriate thing to do, to go through these things, that you're going to be encountered, because that's what you got to do. I mean, that's part of it. And then as much as you be obsessed with learning and understanding that that's the environment you're in, it is all about who you know, not what you know, but who you know, and the power of networking and surrounding yourself with winners. Those are the things that I would share. And you're always learning as part of this, guys. You know, is the other thing too, is that there's no right or wrong path of whatever you choose to pursue. And I would say you can go through this experience and try these things and pursue some of these things. They only set you up to be, even if you go into a corporate world later in life, you've had incredible experiences by virtue of pursuing these things, is what I would.
Well said. Yeah. So what I would advise is, if there's a company that is in a startup and you have something to offer, get a hold of the CEO, get a hold of the COO, and ask them if you can help. Because a lot of people basically, over the course of doing SplitFit, we've had a lot of people come to us and have offered help. And some we pay, some we don't pay. Just depends on the position you guys are in. And you learn a lot, because you start to understand what a startup is and how it works and all that kind of stuff. It's literally getting your foot in the door and getting in the game. That's really important, because this is, we are literally, as Brian said earlier, we are literally moving as fast as we can, and we're breaking things every single day. So you guys have ideas, you guys have something to add, call me, just tell me. And if you guys can help, great. So we did a presentation at Tuck School in Dartmouth. We had some people that raised their hand and offered help as well. We've done it at Brandeis, we've done it at Harvard Business School. So these are, the idea is cool. The idea is an interesting idea. It's an interesting play on what we're doing. So if you can offer help, great, we'd love to have it. So, and the other piece I would say is it's team. It's all about team. You can't do this alone in any fashion. You have to build the team around people that are capable of doing something you're not capable of. And everybody on my team, okay, even though I'm the CEO and the founder, honestly, they're a lot smarter than I am, okay? So you build the team basically on those people around you that actually are smarter than what you can actually provide. So yeah, really appreciate your time, guys. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks. Great chat tonight. Thanks everyone for coming, and download, check out SplitFit, and yeah, come out to some of our future Startup Grind events and ETower events as well.
And if you want to try a SplitFit session, there's actually a BodyScapes one-to-one BodyScapes studio in Wellesley, right? Like probably not even a mile.
It's a half a mile from here. In fact, when I drove here,
Perfect.
there was a SplitFit session going on outside with 4 people.
Oh, great.
So, so that's a way to do it. And if you guys, honestly, if $20 is like you're on a super budget, let us know and we'll give you a coupon to try it. It's like we're cool with all that stuff. We just want people to try it, enjoy it. But if you do try it, you got to give feedback. So that's what we would ask. My email, real simple, rshapiro@splitfit.com, bgardner@splitfit.com.
Or if you just go into the app and you're like, have a question.
Oh, he's on there.
I'm the guy behind the scenes that answers all the questions. If I'm not staying close to the customer, I will not relinquish that.
So anything, no questions. You guys get questions? No questions, stupid. We love it. So any feedback's great.
That's great. Thank you.